You learn from every time you make a mistake. You're never going to do that again. That's the most important thing, is that you learn from it. And it's those things that make you better at what you're doing and help you to succeed. So I'm Gnosoulla Tsioupra-Lewis. Everyone calls me Soula. I'm the Chief Talent Officer at the Economist group, which basically means I'm responsible for human resources across the organisation. And human resources is everything to do with our employees, our colleagues. So whether it's recruiting colleagues, pay and benefits, learning and development, promotions, everything to do with our colleagues. And then in a leadership role, I'm also responsible for, as part of the executive team, helping develop the business strategy and then making sure that we've got the right people with the right skills and talents motivated and engaged to deliver that strategy. My favourite part of the job is just dealing with people on a day-to-day basis and feeling as if hopefully I'm making a positive difference in people's lives. So you can be doing something huge and be really, really busy, and then somebody will send me an email and say, thank you so much for doing whatever, or meeting with me earlier, it really made a difference, it was really helpful. And then that gives me a boost and I really enjoy it, and then I carry on with my day. Like all, my parents were immigrants. And so like all first generation immigrants, my parents wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant. And my dad was very sort of values driven, very passionate about politics. And so when I was 4 years old, I remember him saying to me, you are going to be a lawyer and you're going to fight for the truth. And so that was it. So I knew at the age of 4 I was going to be a lawyer. I never even considered doing anything else. I never went through that choice at the age of 16. What am I going to do? I knew I was going to be a lawyer. So when I was 18, 19, I just did what I needed to do to get to university to study law. And I ended up studying Russian and law. And again, I chose Russian because it was different, because I was interested in history. My parents had travelled to what was then the Soviet Union years and years ago. So I just thought it was an interesting thing to study. And so I went into it just wanting to be a lawyer. I thought I would be a criminal lawyer and I would fight for justice and I would be the person saving people. But actually, when I got to the final year of university, I realised that I needed to pay to do my Law Society finals, and I couldn't afford to do that. Whereas there were a lot of city firms who, if you managed to get articles, as it was then, traineeships with them, they would pay for you to go to law school. And because I spoke Russian, because I'd done Russian with law, it set me apart from everybody else. So it was just pure luck that I'd chosen that course. There was loads and loads of, hundreds and hundreds of people applying for these roles, a lot of them from Oxford and Cambridge and this, that and the other, and I didn't have any of that. But what set me apart was I happened to have chosen to do Russian and law, and that made me look different, I guess. By all means, do a law degree if that's what you want to do. You don't have to do a law degree, and you can do something completely different. You can do a chemistry degree and then do the law conversion, and that sets you apart as well. But if you want to do a law degree, that's fine. But I often encourage people to look at courses where you have another angle to it, because otherwise on your application form, you very much look the same as everyone else. And if you have done a pure law degree, that's fine too. But make sure when you're doing your application form, when you're doing your CV, you talk about the differences in your background, because you want to set yourself apart from everyone else. You want to show how committed you are, that you are going to work really hard. So if you show that, you've had Saturday jobs all the way through, or you've helped out with your local community or whatever it might be. A lot of people say now recruit for attitude rather than necessarily experience. And it's those things that you can show that you have a different attitude that will set you apart from other people. I was riddled with anxiety all the way through school and all the way through university and then all the way through the beginning of my career. So I put a huge amount of pressure on myself to do well at school. And every time I had an exam, I was absolutely terrified. I was a wreck. And the same thing goes when I started work as well. I was riddled with anxiety, but on the outside, you couldn't see it. On the outside, I looked really confident. People always used to tell me I looked really confident and I behaved as if I was really confident. On the inside, I was so anxious and so worried about everything. But the flip side of that is because I was so anxious that I worked so hard and tried so hard with everything. And so everyone's got their own thing that they're bearing. Everyone's got their own sort of problems or mental health issues or whatever it might be. But just understand that everyone goes through this stuff. And so however successful, I've spoken to CEOs where I've realised that actually, despite the fact that they're a CEO of a FTSE 100 company and they earn millions at that point, they're also anxious about getting it wrong. And they also are not necessarily the most confident person. So I think the first thing is that whatever's gone wrong in the last 18 months, and people have suffered terribly, whether it's emotional, whether it's, having people being ill, or whether it's, university not being what you'd hoped or losing your job. And the only thing you can think whenever things like that happen is this too will pass. We're in a phase, things will get better and we just need to work through it. And then in terms of how you make sure that you're in the right place for when things pick up and you're looking for roles, I can't emphasize enough that so much of it is about attitude. Don't obsess with whether, obviously doing well academically gets you in through the door, but when you're interviewing, even when you're doing your Saturday job, and I had a dozen Saturday jobs growing up, it's about the attitude you bring to it. Try and do everything as well as you possibly can. Volunteer to help with anyone or doing anything else at work. Put your hand up to do other things if you can. If you can't get your ideal job at the moment, if you want to be a lawyer, for example, or whatever it is you want to be, if you can't get that ideal job, then it's fine to get some other work in the meantime and be paid to do that work in the meantime. But see that as a skill development as well. Whether if you're working in a job, you're learning to work with people, you're learning to cope with bad situations. I know from working in jobs, you can have some really difficult people that you have to work with. That's all good skills and experience. So don't look at it as dead time. Look at it as development time, because then that will help you. All those skills you gain doing that will then help you when you do get into the career that you want to get into. And the other thing I'd say is try and talk to as many people as you can that are in those roles that you want. Make the most of things like Circle, because, again, if I look at the big points in my career where I've taken a really big step forward, it's not so much been me trying to apply for something. It's been people around me saying, Soulla, I think you can do this and I think you should go for this job. And I've always taken advice from mentors and people around me, and that's really helped me a lot in my career. And so I'd say to anyone that's struggling at the moment, make the most of the time you have, whether you're working in a retail job or anything else. Make the most. If you're not working, read, listen to TED Talks, listen to podcasts, take it as a learning opportunity. Because there's so much out there you can learn from, and all of that will add to when you are able to go for your interviews and apply for jobs. All of that will add to your abilities to perform in interviews and then when you get to work. When you do your covering letter, or even when you're doing your CV, talk about what makes you different. Talk about if you had challenging circumstances growing up, it's okay to say, I've overcome this and this in my life in order to be here, or I've experienced of challenges in such and such community and I've learned from that, and therefore I'm now able to blah, blah, blah. And in fact, over the weekend, I was helping someone with their cover letter. And when I read their cover letter, I hope they don't mind me saying, but when I read their cover letter, it was a great cover letter and it said all the right things for that role, but there was nothing about it that really stood out. Whereas I knew her and I knew the challenges she had been through to get to where she was. And I said, you've got to bring some of that out. You've got to talk a little bit more about you personally and what makes, what's gotten you here? What is it that's driving you? And so I asked her to add some of that into her cover letter to make her stand out. And to me, if I then read that cover letter, I'd be thinking, wow, she's had these challenges and yet here she is. That's a sign of someone that's going to have really a great attitude for me when they come to work.